The desert night pressed down like a heavy cloak, wrapping the forward operating base in silence, broken only by the occasional thump of helicopter rotors in the distance. Inside a dimly lit canvas tent, 12 men sat in folding chairs around a battered wooden table. The air smelled faintly of sand, sweat, and oil from the weapons propped neatly against the wall. A single red lamp hung from the ceiling, its glow casting long shadows across their hardened faces. At the head of the table stood Commander Richard Hawley, a man whose presence carried more weight than the bars stitched on his uniform. He had spent 2 decades in the SEALs, had seen more combat than most men could imagine, and carried scars both visible and hidden. His men didn't just follow him because of his rank. They followed because he had earned it, time and time again, in fire and blood. He leaned forward, hands braced on the table, eyes sweeping across the team. "Listen up," he said, his voice low even, the kind of voice that cut through noise without ever needing to rise. The map spread out before them showed a ruined village deep inside enemy territory. The place had once been home to shepherds and traders, but years of war had reduced it to rubble and silence. Intelligence suggested that a high-value target codenamed Spectre was hiding there, protected by a handful of loyal fighters. The mission was simple on paper: infiltrate, capture the target, extract before dawn. But nothing about war was ever simple. "Intel says minimal resistance," Hala continued, tapping a gloved finger against the map. 2, maybe 3 fighters on overwatch. Nothing the drone feed couldn't see. He paused, his jaw tightening. "But I don't buy it. This place? It feels wrong. Too easy." The men shifted in their seats, some exchanging quick glances. They had heard Hale's instincts before, and they had learned never to ignore them. Beside him, Chief Petty Officer Ramirez, his second in command, crossed his arms. Ramirez was broad-shouldered, his beard flecked with gray, a quiet anchor for the younger operators. He spoke rarely, but when he did, his words carried the weight of experience. "So, we plan for more," he said flatly. "Exactly," Hale nodded. "We treat this like a hornet's nest, not a soft target." Around the table, the operators leaned in. There was Brooks, the youngest of the team, barely 24, still carrying that sharp edge of restless energy. Next to him sat Danner, a wiry sniper with the eyes of a predator, always studying, always calculating angles. Across from them, Medic Thompson checked his gear list quietly, lips moving as he ran through the supplies he might need if things went bad, which they always did. Hale drew a circle around the village with a grease pencil. "Insertion here, under cover of night. No vehicles. We move in quiet. Primary objective is to secure Spectre alive. Secondary is survival. We're not here to win hearts and minds, gentlemen. We're here to get in and get out. Extraction?" asked Jacobs, the comms specialist, adjusting his earpiece even though they weren't wearing headsets yet. "Chopper pickup at LZ Bravo, 1 click east," Hale said. "Windows tight 0300 sharp. If we're not there, we're walking out, and trust me, the terrain isn't friendly." He let the silence hang for a moment. The men knew what walking out meant: moving miles on foot through hostile ground with limited water, ammo, and no guarantee of survival. Finally, Hale straightened, resting his hands on his hips. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, swept the room again. "We've done this 100 times. But don't let that fool you. Complacency gets men killed. The enemy out there may not have our training, but they know that ground better than we ever will. And sometimes, one man with patience and a rifle can be deadlier than a dozen with AKs." Those words hung heavier than the desert air itself. The team knew what he meant. They had all lost brothers to snipers who waited in silence, ghosts who turned a routine mission into a nightmare. Ramirez cleared his throat. Gear check in 10. Wheels up in 30. The men began to rise, chairs scraping against the dirt floor. Brooks adjusted the strap of his helmet, trying to mask the nervous energy with a grin. Spectre, huh? Funny Cody name. Sounds like we're chasing a ghost. Danner, the sniper, gave him a look sharp enough to cut steel. Don't joke about ghosts, he muttered. Not out here. The commander's eyes lingered on Brooks for a moment longer, then shifted back to the map. He had seen too many young men talk light before the storm, trying to mask fear with humor. Some survived long enough to turn that fear into steel. Others didn't. Outside the tent, the desert wind kicked up, rattling the canvas. Somewhere in the distance, a generator coughed and growled. The camp was alive with quiet preparation technicians loading gear, pilots checking rotors, medics inventorying supplies. The SEALs moved among them like shadows, efficient, silent, their minds already on the village that waited for them. Halle stepped outside, the cool night air rushing against his face. He looked up at the stars, uncaring, eternal, and exhaled slowly. Every mission carried the same weight, but this one felt different. He couldn't shake it. Ramirez joined him a moment later. You think it's a trap? Halle didn't answer right away. He watched a convoy of trucks roll across the base, their headlights dimmed, their wheels crunching against gravel. Finally, he said, every mission's a trap. The only question is how well we spring it. Ramirez gave a short nod, the kind that came from years of understanding. Then we make sure we're the ones who walk out. The commander's gaze drifted back to the tent, where his men were checking weapons, tightening straps, and muttering final words of encouragement. They trusted him with their lives. He owed them more than strategy. He owed them a chance to see the sunrise. As the clock ticked toward launch, the team assembled near the waiting transport. Rifles were locked and loaded, night vision goggles clipped in place, radios tested with short, crisp words. No laughter now. No nervous chatter. Just men sliding into the quiet focus that came before stepping into the unknown. Halle stood before them one last time. You all know your jobs. You all know what's at stake. We move silent, we move fast, and we don't stop until Spectre's in custody. Trust your training. Trust each other. And when it gets loud, and it will remember why we're here. For a moment, his voice softened. We bring each other home. That was the only promise a commander could make, and even then, it was one he had broken before. The rotors spun up, chopping the night into shards of sound. The SEALs climbed aboard, faces set, bodies coiled like springs. Halle took the last seat, his rifle resting across his lap. As the bird lifted off the ground, the base fell away beneath them, shrinking into a pool of light in an endless ocean of dark. Ahead lay the ruined village, the mission, and the unknown. Halle closed his eyes for a brief second, listening to the thunder of the rotors, and whispered the words he never let his men hear. Let this not be the one that breaks us. The night swallowed them whole. The helicopter touched down miles from the target zone, its rotors beating against the desert floor before the pilot eased back on the throttle. The SEAL team spilled out quickly, boots sinking into soft sand, weapons slung but ready. The night swallowed the bird as it lifted off again, banking east to avoid detection. Within seconds, the thunder of its blades faded, leaving only the vast silence of the desert. Commander Richard Hall crouched low, his night vision goggles glowing green as he scanned the horizon. The ruined village lay ahead, a dark smear against the pale dunes. No lights, no sound, just jagged silhouettes of collapsed rooftops and broken walls, standing like the bones of something long dead. Move out, Halle ordered softly over combs. His voice was steady, calm, carrying the weight of authority. The team advanced in a staggered column, each man maintaining distance, rifles sweeping across the landscape. Their boots pressed into the sand with muted crunches, careful not to break the night with unnecessary sound. Above, the stars stretched endlessly, sharp and cold, indifferent to the human figures threading across the earth. Young Brooks struggled to quiet his breathing, his heart hammering against his ribs. Every shadow seemed alive. He glanced toward Ramirez, who moved ahead with the poise of a man who had done this more times than he could count. Ramirez didn't falter, didn't hesitate. He was the kind of operator Brooks wanted to be, the kind who made danger look routine. The ground shifted beneath them as they reached the outskirts of the village. Rubble crunched faintly underfoot, a sound that seemed deafening in the stillness. Broken stone houses leaned into one another, their walls scarred by years of gunfire and shelling. The village looked like a graveyard of forgotten lives, abandoned but not at peace. "Check your sectors," Hale whispered. His eyes swept the rooftops, the windows, the gaps in walls. His instincts were a sharpened blade, honed by years of surviving places just like this. Silence was never a gift in war, it was a warning. Danner, the sniper, paused, crouching behind a half-buried wall. He raised his scope, scanning methodically. "No heat signatures," he murmured. His voice carried the tone of unease. "Doesn't feel right, boss. Too clean." Hale's jaw tightened. He felt it too. Intelligence reports had insisted only a handful of fighters guarded the target. But Hale knew better than to trust tidy numbers on a page. The battlefield was chaos, and chaos always hid teeth. They moved deeper into the village, weaving through narrow alleys littered with debris. A child's toy truck lay half-buried in the dust, its plastic cracked by years of neglect. A broken door swung on rusted hinges, creaking faintly in the wind. Every small sound was amplified, setting nerves on edge. Brooks brushed against a wall and startled at the rasp of fabric against stone. His pulse spiked, and Thompson, the medic, gave him a sharp look. "Easy, kid," he whispered. "The shadows only kill you if you let them." But Brooks couldn't shake the feeling that something was already watching them, hidden in the stillness. The teen halted at an intersection of crumbled streets. Hale raised a fist, signaling silence. Ahead, the village square opened up, wide and exposed under the pale wash of moonlight. The ruins around it provided countless places for an enemy to wait. Hale studied it for a long moment, his mind tracing possible lines of fire, possible kill zones. "Ramirez," Hale whispered. "Flank left. Danner, overwatch on that ridge." Ramirez nodded and slipped into the shadows, his movement so fluid it was as though he belonged to them. Danner climbed onto a collapsed wall, his rifle scope sweeping the horizon with surgical patience. The others waited, crouched low, every sense straining for signs of danger. Then came a sound faint, almost imperceptible. A scrape of stone on stone, carried by the wind. The men froze. Brooks' mouth went dry. Hale's eyes narrowed behind his NVGs. "Hold," Hall breathed. They waited, listening. Nothing followed. Just silence again. But silence wasn't comfort, it was pressure, building heavier with every second. The commander exhaled slowly. "Advance." They crossed the square one by one, boots crunching softly against gravel, weapons raised. Every rooftop, every hollow doorway, every shattered window seemed to stare back at them. It was too quiet. Villages like this usually echoed with stray animals, rustling winds, some sign of life. Here there was nothing. When they reached the far side, Ramirez rejoined them, his expression grim. "Empty. Too empty." "Then it's not empty," Hale muttered. He wasn't the kind of man who believed in luck. As if to confirm his fear, a gust of wind blew through the village, rattling the debris, and for a moment, Hale swore he saw movement, a flicker of shadow across a rooftop. He raised his rifle instantly, eyes scanning. Nothing, just broken stone. The men were good, the best, but even the best couldn't fight what they couldn't see. And somewhere, Hale knew, eyes were on them. "Eyes up," he said softly into comms. "This place is wrong. Stay sharp." Brooks' voice cracked slightly as he whispered back, "Sir, are we sure Spectre's even here?" Hale didn't look at him. His gaze was locked on the darkness that seemed to thicken around them. "He's here. Or something is." The team pressed on, weaving deeper into the labyrinth of ruins. They moved with precision, each man covering the other, each corner cleared with military perfection. But no resistance came. No fighters, no gunfire, no alarm. The absence itself became the threat. Every step forward stretched their nerves tighter. Thompson muttered a quiet prayer under his breath, his eyes flicking upward as if searching the sky for strength. Danner's finger rested against his trigger, ready to snap at the first twitch of movement. Ramirez scanned their rear, keeping the team locked in a circle of vigilance. Finally, they reached the building marked as the possible hideout. Its walls leaned, cracked by artillery, its door half collapsed. Hale signaled the stack. The men lined up silently, their breaths controlled, their hearts loud in their ears. Hale gave a final nod, and Ramirez kicked the door in. The inside was dust and silence. No movement. No heat signatures. Just emptiness. The men swept the room quickly, rifles covering every corner, every crevice. But there was nothing, no fighters, no target, not even the remnants of occupation. Just bare stone walls, and the ghost of something that had once been. Brooks' voice broke the silence. "Sir, it's deserted." Hale stared into the shadows, his jaw tightening. He didn't believe in deserted places. Not here, not now. He turned slowly, scanning the windows, the rooftops, the ruins that surrounded them like jagged teeth. Somewhere out there, he thought, the real mission was waiting, and the darkness was only beginning to breathe. The ruined building they had cleared was empty, but the silence afterward wasn't the silence of peace. It was the kind that weighed on men's chests, the kind that screamed of something unseen. Commander Hale crouched near a shattered window, scanning rooftops through his NVGs, every muscle taut. Then the night ripped apart. The first shots cracked like thunderclaps, snapping through the village with violent precision. Bullets shattered stone inches from Hale's head, spraying dust and grit into the air. "Contact! Contact!" Ramirez barked, his voice steady, controlled. The SEALs dropped instantly into practiced movements, each man diving to cover as rifles snapped upward. The alley lit up in strobing flashes of fire as enemy muzzles sparked from the rooftops. Shadows moved quick, darting from ledge to ledge, firing and disappearing into the dark. Hale pressed against the wall, calm in the chaos. Suppressing fire, right flank. "Danner, find me the shooters." Danner had already dropped to his belly, scope pressed tight to his eye. His voice was low but sharp. "Two on the north roof. One behind that tower, 300 meters. Take him," Hale ordered. The sniper's rifle cracked, the sound muffled by its suppressor, but its effect was violent. One shadow crumpled and fell from the roof, hitting the ground with a dull thud. A second dropped seconds later, a neat hole punched clean through his chest. But more fire rained down from the east, forcing the team to shift positions. Thompson dragged Brooks into cover as bullets sparked off the rubble. "Keep your head down, kid," he snarled. Brooks' breathing was fast, ragged, but he nodded, pressing his rifle tight to his chest. Ramirez's voice snapped over comms. "Moving left, cover." The men shifted with practiced fluidity, one group laying down fire while the other advanced. They moved like a machine, deadly, precise, efficient. The alley echoed with sharp bursts of controlled gunfire, each man picking targets with lethal accuracy. But the enemy was quick, darting through shadows, using the ruins as cover. These weren't untrained fighters. Halle recognized the way they moved. Disciplined, coordinated, whoever they were. They weren't the minimal resistance Intel had promised. Another burst hammered their position. Brooks returned fire, bullets sparking against stone, but his shots went wide. Slow down. Halle barked, his voice cutting through the gunfire. Make it count. Brooks steadied, swallowed hard, and fired again. This time, his round clipped an enemy's shoulder, spinning him off balance before Ramirez finished him with a controlled burst. A firefight stretched into minutes that felt like hours. The village roared with echoes of gunfire, the stench of burned powder thick in the air. Halle moved his men with precision, pushing them through alleys, clearing rooftops one by one. Slowly, the enemy resistance began to falter. Shadows fled into the night, gunfire thinning, until the last bursts faded into silence. Hold, Halle ordered, raising a fist. The men froze, weapons sweeping, listening. Only their ragged breathing filled the comms now. The commander stepped into the open, scanning the square. Bodies lay sprawled in the dust, rifles scattered. Smoke drifted upward from burning debris, curling into the star-drenched sky. For now, the shooting had stopped. But Halle didn't relax. His gut told him this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Ramirez approached, rifle still up, eyes sweeping the rooftops. "You good, boss?" Halle gave a curt nod. His helmet was dusted with grit, his jaw clenched tight. They were waiting. That wasn't random. "Yeah," Ramirez agreed grimly. "And that wasn't 2 or 3 fighters." Halle looked at his men, Brooks catching his breath, Thompson checking ammo, Danner calmly wiping his scope. They were ready for more, but the tension in their eyes mirrored his own. The village had answered back, and it hadn't finished speaking yet. The firefight ended as suddenly as it had begun. The village lay in eerie quiet, broken only by the hiss of a small fire chewing through dry wood. Smoke curled upward, drifting across the moonlight like the last breath of something unseen. Commander Hall stood at the edge of the square, his rifle lowered, but still in his grip. He scanned the rooftops, the alleys, the ruins. Nothing moved. No gunfire, no shadows darting in the night. Just silence. Behind him, Brooks muttered, voice tight with nerves. "Think that's all of them?" Ramirez shot him a look sharp enough to cut steel. "Don't assume," he said. "Ever." But Hala, after a long pause, exhaled. His men needed steadiness now, needed to believe the storm had passed. He raised his voice, not just to them, but to the night itself. "It's over," he shouted, his words echoing through the ruins. The sound carried, bouncing between walls, rolling into empty streets. For a moment, it felt like truth, like the fight had been won, the danger crushed beneath their boots. Brooks even let out a shaky laugh, his rifle lowering slightly. Thompson began reloading calmly, the mechanical click of ammo sliding into a fresh magazine, breaking the stillness. But the commander knew better. He had seen too many battlefields, too many traps, to trust silence. Still, he let the words stand. His men needed them. The SEALs regrouped near a crumbled wall, checking ammo and wounds. Danner crouched, scope raised, scanning methodically. Ramirez rechecked comms, muttering into his mic. The air was thick with tension and smoke. Halle tilted his head back, listening. The night was so quiet it felt wrong. Too still. Too heavy. "Boss," Ramirez said low, "you really think it's done?" Hale's jaw tightened. "It's never done." And then the night answered. A single crack split the silence, louder than thunder, sharper than lightning. The sound was clean, perfect, the voice of a master marksman. Hale felt the impact before he heard it, the bullet striking his helmet with bone-rattling force. His vision flared white as shards of Kevlar sprayed across his face. He stumbled, knees buckling, nearly falling. Sniper. Ramirez roared, dragging him into cover. The men scattered instantly, slamming against walls, rifles raised, scanning desperately. But there was nothing. No muzzle flash, no shadow on the rooftops, no trace of the shooter. Just the echo of the shot, hanging in the air like a curse. Brooks' voice cracked with panic. "Where's he at? I don't see him. Where the hell is he?" "Quiet," Danner snapped, his eyes locked through his scope, scanning, searching. His breathing slowed, controlled, as he swept rooftop after rooftop. But even he couldn't find the source. Whoever had fired was hidden too well, too deep. Hale steadied himself, breathing hard, touching the shredded edge of his helmet. A fraction of an inch, and that bullet would have ended him. His eyes narrowed, his voice a low growl. "He's out there, watching, waiting." The men huddled tighter into cover, nerves frayed. Every window was a threat. Every shadow seemed alive. And the commander's declaration that it was over now hung in the air like a cruel joke. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. The village had been quiet after the firefight, but now the silence carried weight. Not peace pressure. A silence that pressed into the bones, squeezing hearts and sharpening nerves. The SEALs hugged the crumbled walls, their breaths controlled, every sense reaching into the night for answers. The single sniper's shot still echoed in their ears. It had been perfect, clean, precise, cold. Commander Hale's helmet carried the proof, a jagged gash torn through the Kevlar, where death had grazed him by less than an inch. He crouched in the dust, steadying his breath, forcing calm into his voice. "Stay low. Eyes everywhere," he ordered. But even as he spoke, he knew the sniper wasn't just shooting bullets. He was firing fear. The unseen enemy had seized control of the battlefield with a single round. Brooks' hands trembled as he reloaded, his rifle clicking too loudly in the suffocating silence. His voice broke. He swallowed hard. "He almost got you, sir." "Almost doesn't count," Hale cut in, sharp but steady. His eyes swept the rooftops, the windows, the shadows. "He won't miss next time if we let him set the pace. We move smart. We move together." Danner lay prone, his sniper rifle pressed tight to his shoulder. His breathing slowed as he scanned, inch by inch, rooftop to rooftop. Sweat trickled down his temple beneath his helmet. No flash, no glint. He's a ghost. Knows his ground. "Then we smoke him out," Ramirez muttered, pulling a smoke grenade from his vest. He glanced at Hale for approval. Hale gave a short nod. "On my mark." The grenade arced into the square, hissing as it released thick clouds that billowed into the night. The SEALs shifted positions under the cover, moving sharp and precise. For a moment, the smoke seemed to give them back control. And then another crack. The bullet cut through the haze like a whisper from the dark. It struck Jacobs, the comms specialist, tearing through his shoulder and throwing him to the ground. His scream ripped the night, raw and human. "Man down." "Thompson." Hale barked, dragging Jacobs behind a wall. Blood poured between his fingers as Thompson dropped beside him, hands already working fast, sealing the wound, pressing gauze deep. Ramirez cursed under his breath. "This bastard's good. He's firing blind through smoke." "No," Danner said, his voice low, almost grudging. "He sees, somehow, he sees." The words chilled everyone. The sniper fired again, another perfect crack that ricocheted against stone inches from Brooks' helmet. The young operator flinched, pressing lower into the dirt. "How the hell does he know where we are?" he hissed. "Sound, movement, discipline," Halle said grimly. "And patience. He's hunting us like prey." The SEALs had trained for this fighting in the dark, fighting unseen enemies. But this was different. This wasn't a squad. This was one man, one rifle, and he was dictating every step they took. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The SEALs shifted positions carefully, using hand signals, moving like shadows. But no matter how careful, how silent, they felt his eyes on them. Each time they thought they had him, another shot would rip through the night from a different angle, forcing them back into cover. "He's mobile," Danner muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. "Moving between shots, fast, knows this ground better than we do." "Which means he planned this," Halle said. His voice was calm, but inside, a cold certainty was hardening. This wasn't random. He knew we'd come here. Ramirez spat into the dirt. Intel was wrong. This whole op was a setup. The commander didn't argue. He couldn't, not with Jacobs bleeding, not with the sniper playing them like pieces on a board. Jacobs groaned as Thompson tightened the bandage. "He's stable," Thompson said, though his voice was tight. "But he won't be carrying his weight now." "Doesn't matter," Halle replied. "We all carry each other. We're not leaving anyone behind." A faint sound cut through the night, the creak of shifting rubble, far off but deliberate. Halle froze, raising a hand. His men stilled instantly, eyes straining through NVGs, ears reaching for the source. Danner adjusted his scope. "There," he whispered. "South rooftop." Just a flicker. Hale's heart steadied. "You got him?" "Not yet," Danner murmured. His finger curled against the trigger, his breath slowing, every muscle coiled in absolute stillness. "Come on, show yourself." Another shot cracked. Stone exploded inches from Danner's scope, forcing him back. The sniper had been watching him too, had anticipated his position. "Shit," Danner hissed, rolling behind cover. "He's not just shooting. He's reading us." The realization sank like a stone into the group. The sniper wasn't just good, he was masterful. Every move they made, he countered. Every attempt to bait him, he flipped. He was more than a shooter. He was a ghost. The SEALs adjusted, their circle tightening, communication clipped and sharp. Each man watched his sector, each man waiting for the next crack from the dark. Their breaths sounded louder than gunfire. The weight of the unseen enemy pressed heavier with each passing minute. Brooks whispered, "Why doesn't he finish it? He could have taken out more of us by now." Hale's eyes narrowed. He had wondered the same. And then the answer settled, cold and merciless. "Because he's toying with us. He wants us to know we're prey." The men went quiet, the truth gnawing at them. Another shot ripped out, striking close enough to spray dust across Hale's cheek. His teeth clenched, but his eyes hardened. He would not give this ghost the satisfaction of fear. He keyed his mic, his voice low, controlled for his men alone. "Listen to me. He's flesh and blood. He breathes, he bleeds, and he can die. Ghost or not, we find him, and we end him." The men nodded, resolve returning to their eyes. Fear was still there, but so was steel. Above them, the night stretched endlessly, the stars cold and silent witnesses. Somewhere in that darkness, the rifle waited again, its unseen barrel steady, its unseen trigger finger patient. And as the SEALs pressed deeper into the village, they knew the next shot could come at any second. The ghost rifle was not finished speaking. It was only clearing its throat. The village had become a cage. Every cracked wall, every jagged rooftop, Every shadow felt like the edge of a barrel aimed at them. The SEAL team moved carefully, deliberately, but the truth pressed on them with every breath. They were no longer hunters. They were prey. Commander Hale crouched against a broken archway, NVG's glowing, sweat streaking down his dust-caked face. His men waited in silence, scattered in cover, their rifles tight in their hands. The sniper hadn't fired in several minutes, but his silence was worse than the cracks of his rifle. Silence meant he was watching, choosing. Ramirez broke it with a whisper, his voice low but edged. "Boss, we can't stay pinned here. He's got the advantage. We need to break contact and pull out." "No," Hale said immediately, his tone steel. "We leave, we walk straight into his kill zone. He's not hurting us by accident, he's funneling us." "And into what?" Thompson asked, still crouched over Jacobs, who was pale from blood loss but stable. His hands shook from more than the medic's exhaustion. "Because right now it feels like into our graves." Hale's eyes swept the ruins. He could feel it patterns hidden in the chaos. The sniper wasn't spraying rounds like an amateur. Every shot had been deliberate. Every pause calculated. Hale had fought dozens of insurgents, warlords, and killers, but this was something different. Something personal. "Danner," Hale said quietly, "you've hunted snipers before. Talk to me." Danner's cheek rested against his rifle stock, his scope slowly sweeping the rooftops. He didn't blink. This guy isn't just good. He's disciplined. Moves after every shot. Picks angles we'd never see without thermal. His jaw tightened. He's military, trained, maybe better trained than us. Brooks swallowed hard. What if it is him? The ghost, Spectre. A name hung in the air, like a curse. Ramirez cut him a sharp look. "Ghost stories don't pull triggers, kid. Flesh and blood does." But no one contradicted Brooks. Not even Hal. A breeze stirred dust across the square, and Hale's mind worked like a machine, piecing fragments. Whoever this shooter was, he wasn't improvising. He had lured them here. He was controlling every heartbeat of this fight. And Hale hated giving anyone that kind of power. The commander leaned in close to his men, his voice measured. "We don't outgun him. Not like this. But he's got patterns. Nobody's invisible. We find the gaps, and we make him bleed." "How?" Ramirez asked flatly. "He's dictating every move." "We dictate back," Hale replied. He tapped his combs, whispering his plan. They would split in pairs, moving in silence, weaving through separate alleys. The sniper would try to track them, but in splitting, they would force him to choose. Expose himself. And once he did, Danner would be waiting. The team nodded grimly, each man knowing the risk. To split was to weaken, but to stay together was to die slow. They moved. Ramirez and Brooks ghosted left through a narrow alley, their boots soundless against the dust. Hale stayed with Danner, threading the opposite side. Thompson, dragging Jacobs, brought up the rear. Every movement was rehearsed, practiced, yet under the sniper's unseen eye, it felt fragile. The village breathed around them. Walls groaned softly in the wind. Scraps of rusted tin rattled faintly. The night was alive with small noises that could all be mistaken for footsteps, for danger. And then crack. The shot split the night. Brooks cried out, slamming against a wall. The round had chewed stone inches from his head, spraying grit across his face. Ramirez shoved him down, returning a burst of suppressive fire toward the dark rooftops. Muzzle flashes bloomed in the distance, not from Ramirez, but from the sniper. "He's on us." Ramirez barked into coms. "No, he's shifting," Danner countered, his voice calm despite the chaos. He had seen the flash, seen the fleeting shape of a man against the skyline. His rifle snapped to the spot, Finger-tightening crack. Danner jerked back as a round hissed past his scope, so close it burned the air. The sniper had fired at him while firing at Brooks, playing 2 games at once. "Jesus, he baited me," Danner hissed. His pride was stung, but his fear was sharper. This guy knows exactly how we think. Another shot slammed into the stone near Thompson, sending fragments across his arm. He grunted, but kept Jacobs shielded. He's not just firing to kill, Halle realized aloud. He's firing to move us, herding us tighter. Every shot's a shepherd's crook. "And we're the sheep," Ramirez spat. The words stung because they were true. Hale's mind spun. He could feel the sniper's presence, like a hand reaching into their formation, closing a fist around them. He wasn't fighting for survival. He was playing, testing, measuring them. For a heartbeat, Halle wondered if this was Spectre, the mythical ghost the locals whispered about. A man who was said to fight like shadow, kill without being seen, vanish without leaving tracks. But no myth could fire with such precision. This was real, and real meant beatable. "Ramirez," Halle said into Combs, voice low, even. "Push him left. Force him into that tower. Danner, take the angle. I'll cover Thompson." Ramirez didn't argue. He nodded once, dragging Brooks along as they shifted positions, laying down controlled fire into the rooftops. The shots cracked like thunder, echoing between ruins. The sniper answered immediately. Another round lashed out, shooing the wall Ramirez had ducked behind. Dust clouded the air. But it worked. He shifted left, adjusting his fire. Danner's scope tracked him. At last, just a flicker of shape, a sliver of movement on the tower's edge. A silhouette too deliberate to be rubble. "Got you," Danner whispered. His finger squeezed. The shot rang out. But not his. Danner's rifle jerked as the sniper's round smashed through his scope, shattering glass into his eye. He screamed, rolling back, blood pouring from the cut. "Danner's hit," Halle shouted, dragging the sniper out of the open, pressing a hand to his face. The man was still alive, but half-blind, his rifle useless. Ramirez's voice snarled over Combs. "He's laughing at us, Commander." He knew where Danner would be new when he'd take the shot. Hale's chest tightened. The sniper wasn't just anticipating them. He was inside their heads. Jacobs groaned, voice weak but clear. "Boss, it's him." "It's Spectre?" The word hung in the air, heavier than the gunfire. Halle didn't answer. Not yet. His men needed steel, not superstition. But inside, in the marrow of his bones, he wondered. Because the unseen enemy was fighting like no soldier Hall had ever faced. And he wasn't finished yet. The air inside the ruined village felt heavier with every breath, as though the walls themselves were suffocating the seals. Dust swirled with each shot, each movement, but the sniper remained invisible, unseen, yet everywhere, a presence carved into the night itself. Commander Richard Heil crouched low beside Danner, whose face was streaked with blood from his shattered scope. The sniper's round had missed his brain by less than a whisper, but his right eye was ruined. Thompson worked furiously with gauze and bandages, his hands shaking but precise. Danner, half-blind and writhing with pain, still tried to push Thompson away. "Get me my rifle," he gasped. "I can still—" "No," Halle said sharply, pressing him back. "You've done enough. Rest." The words tasted bitter on Hale's tongue. Danner had been their eye, their silent watchtower. Now he was broken, and the sniper had done it deliberately, taking away their strength piece by piece. Ramirez's voice hissed through Combs. "Boss, this bastard's tearing us apart. Jacobs is down, Danner's down. We stay here. He'll pick us off one by one." "He wants me," Halle said quietly, his jaw tight. "He's not just fighting us. He's fighting me. Brooks' voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. Why you? Hale didn't answer right away. His eyes swept the black ruins, seeing not stone and shadow, but the mind behind the shots. Precision like that wasn't random. It was personal. Finally, he said, because I've hunted men like him before. Maybe I've hunted him. The silence that followed was heavier than the gunfire. Hale keyed his mic, his tone clipped. Ramirez, Brooks, you hold position. Cover Thompson and the wounded. This ghost wants me? He'll get me. Sir, no. Ramirez barked. That's suicide. It's calculation, Hale countered. He's watching us like pieces on a board. So I'll give him a new piece. A bait he can't resist. Ramirez cursed under his breath, but didn't argue. He knew Hale was right. Hale pulled the NVGs from his helmet, sliding them off. The village glowed green through their lenses, but he needed something else. He needed raw instinct, the sharpened edge of darkness itself. He moved out slowly, deliberately, each footstep whispering against rubble. His rifle was steady in his hands, but he didn't raise it yet. Not until the ghost revealed himself. The village square yawned before him, wide and exposed, littered with shattered stone and broken beams. Moonlight painted jagged shadows across the ground. Hale stepped into it like stepping into the jaws of a beast. His breath slowed, his heartbeat steadied. Every nerve in his body screamed that death was a hair's breadth away, watching him through a scope from the dark. And then it came. Crack. The round sliced past his shoulder, tearing cloth but missing flesh. Hale dove behind a chunk of collapsed wall, rolling into cover. He smiled grimly through clenched teeth. Got you, he whispered. You're watching me. The sniper had taken the shot, but not to kill. Hale felt it in his bones. It had been a warning, a message. I see you. Hale peered around the rubble. The rooftops stared back, jagged black teeth against the pale sky. Somewhere up there, Spectre lay prone, rifle steady, watching, waiting. Hale pulled a flashbang from his vest, kissed the pin, and tossed it high toward the rooftops. It exploded in a burst of white light and thunder. For a split second, Hale thought he saw it a silhouette shifting, just beyond the blast. He fired. 3 controlled shots, fast and precise. The rounds punched into stone, and the silhouette vanished. Silence again. Only silence. But Hale's blood surged. He had forced movement. Forced the ghost to shift. That was the first crack in the armor. Back with the team, Brooks' voice whispered urgently over comms. Commander, are you? I'm fine. Hale cut him off. Stay put. Don't break formation. This is between me and him now. His men didn't argue. They knew the tone in his voice. Hale slid deeper into the village, weaving through alleys, keeping his head low. He moved like he had 1,000 times in hostile cities, but this was different. Here, he wasn't clearing rooms or chasing targets. He was walking into the crosshairs of a master. He stopped at the base of a leaning tower, its staircase half collapsed. Carefully, he climbed, boots crunching against loose stone. The higher he went, the more exposed he became, the more the night seemed to lean closer. At the top, he pressed against a wall and peeked through a gap. The rooftops stretched out like a chessboard, black shapes against the silver wash of moonlight. He scanned slowly, every nerve sharp. A shadow shifted, barely a whisper of movement. Hale froze. His breath stilled, and then he saw it the faintest glint. Not of glass, not of metal, just the suggestion of an eye watching him. Hale's finger tightened on the trigger, but the sniper fired first. The round smashed stone inches from his face, spraying dust into his eyes. Hale jerked back, coughing, half-blind, but alive. He rolled down the tower steps, boots scraping, lungs burning. Another shot slammed into the stone where his head had been. He hit the ground hard, heart pounding, adrenaline flooding every vein. The sniper hadn't missed by accident. He was playing with him, testing him. "Come on then," Halle muttered, forcing himself to his feet. "You want me? You'll have to step out of the dark." The village held its breath. Somewhere above, Spectre chambered another round. The metallic click carried faintly through the ruins, a predator's growl in the stillness. For the first time, Halle felt something rare, something he hadn't tasted in years of war uncertainty. Not fear, not yet, but close. Because he realized now, with a cold certainty, that this wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a duel. Man against ghost. Soldier against shadow. And only one would walk out when the dark was finished speaking. The village was silent again, but the silence no longer belonged to the seals. It belonged to him. The sniper. The ghost. Spectre. Commander Richard Howell crouched low in the shadows of a half-collapsed house, breathing slow, listening to the night. Every fragment of stone, every whisper of wind carried meaning. Somewhere out there, unseen and patient, the rifle waited. Behind him, his men huddled in cover. Jacobs was pale but alive. Thompson bent over him like a shield. Danner, his ruined eye bandaged, clenched his jaw in pain, muttering curses against the ghost who had broken him. Ramirez and Brooks kept their rifles up, scanning the ruins, but their hands trembled. "Sir," Ramirez whispered into Combs, "let us back you. We can push him together." "No," Halle answered quietly, steel in his tone. "That's what he wants, targets moving in a pack. He'll cut you down. This is mine now." Silence answered him. The men didn't like it, but they knew better than to argue. Halle had the voice of a man who had already decided. He pulled his helmet tighter, adjusted his rifle, and stepped back into the open square. The moon was his spotlight, the ruins his stage. He wasn't sneaking anymore. He wanted the ghost to see him. And the ghost obliged. Crack. The round slammed into stone just feet from Halle, spraying shards into his arm. He hissed at the sting, but kept moving forward, not breaking pace. Another round followed, striking dust near his boots. Spectre wasn't missing. He was measuring, testing the distance, toying with him. "Come on," Halle muttered, voice low, eyes scanning rooftops. "Stop whispering, shout." The sniper remained silent. Halle pressed on, weaving through rubble, every muscle tight, his senses screaming. He could feel him now. Not see, not hear, but feel. A predator's gaze pressing into the back of his neck. He slipped into a narrow alley, boots crunching glass. Shadows clung to the walls. He crouched, rifle raised, ears tuned. And then, a voice. Not in his headset. Not in his imagination. A voice carried soft and low across the ruins. "You're slower than I remember, Commander." Halle froze. The voice was calm, measured, laced with quiet amusement. Not an insurgent. Not a local fighter. This was English. American. "You know me," Halle said, voice steady. "I've studied you," the voice replied. "Your missions. Your tactics. I know the way you breathe before you shoot. The way you pause when you make a decision. A pause. And I know the sound your men make when they die." Hale's grip tightened on his rifle. "You're no ghost. You're just a coward with a scope." A low chuckle carried through the air. "Coward? I've been watching you since you stepped off the bird. I've had your life in my hand 10 times tonight. But where's the fun in ending it so quickly?" "No, Commander. This is art." Hale's mind raced. The voice was moving, echoing off the walls, bouncing through alleys. He couldn't pin the direction. "Your specter," Halle said finally. It wasn't a question. Another pause. Then the voice came softer, closer. "Names don't matter. Only the echo we leave behind. Mine is already legend. Yours will be a tombstone." The barrel flashed crack. The round slammed into Hale's cover, punching a fist-sized hole through stone. Dust showered his face, but he stayed low, rolling to the side. He fired back, 3 sharp bursts into the rooftop opposite. Nothing, just shadow. "You missed," the voice whispered. Halle didn't reply. He forced his breathing slow, his thoughts tighter. He couldn't outshoot Spectre in the open. He had to break his rhythm. He dug into his pouch, pulling free a flashbang. He yanked the pin, tossed it high across the rooftops. It burst, white fire splitting the night. Halle moved instantly, sprinting across the square, diving into another alley. Crack! The sniper fired blind through the flash. Missed. For the first time, Halle smiled grimly. He could be fooled. The duel stretched on, each man stalking the other through rubble and silence. Halle moved low and silent, forcing Spectre to shift. Each time the sniper fired, Halle grew closer to reading him, closer to mapping his rhythm, his patterns. But Spectre was reading too. Twice Halle barely avoided rounds that tracked him mid-move, bullets carving air where his chest had been seconds before. The man wasn't just shooting, he was predicting. It came to a head at the base of the tower, the same leaning ruin where Danner had lost his eye. Halle pressed against the stone, heart pounding, sweat soaking his collar. Above, he could feel it, the rifle waiting. He dropped another flashbang, but this time he didn't throw it. He let it clatter deliberately on the ground, loud enough to be heard. Then he circled, fast, silent. Spectre fired at the sound, his shot cracking into empty dust. And in that half-second Hale saw him, a shadow prone against the rooftop, the faint gleam of a barrel, the shape of a man, flesh and blood after all. Halle raised his rifle and fired. The shot tore through stone inches from Spectre's head. The ghost rolled instantly, silent and precise, dropping from the rooftop to another ledge. But Halle was already moving, chasing, firing controlled bursts to pin him down. The duel became chaos too, predators darting through ruins, trading bursts, stone shattering, sparks flying. Each near miss felt like fate deciding, and then hesitating. Then it happened. Spectre landed behind a collapsed wall, spun his rifle, and leveled it at Halle. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met across the sight screen, NVG glow against cold human steel. Both fired. Halle dove, his shoulder burning as the round grazed flesh. His own shot struck home, not in the head, not the chest, but the shoulder. Spectre staggered, the ghost suddenly human. Blood sprayed dark across stone. The legend bled. Spectre hissed, retreating, dragging himself deeper into shadow. Halle rose, ignoring the sting of his own wound, rifle steady, eyes locked. "No more hiding," Halle growled. But when he turned the corner, Spectre was gone. Just blood on stone, a trail vanishing into the dark. The night fell silent again. Behind him, his men emerged from cover, their faces pale but alive. Ramirez's voice was hushed. "Sir, did you get him?" Halle looked at the blood trail, then at the empty rooftops. His chest rose and fell, heavy. "Not tonight," he said finally. "But he knows now. He bleeds like the rest of us." The men gathered around, weary, wounded, but standing. Jacobs leaned against Thompson, Brooks wide-eyed, Ramirez scanning the rooftops one last time. The village was quiet. Too quiet. But the silence no longer pressed like a weight. It was just silence. For now. As the team exfiltrated, Hiley cast one last glance over his shoulder, into the black ruins where the ghost had vanished. His jaw tightened. The duel wasn't over. Somewhere in the dark, the ghost rifle was waiting to speak again. And Commander Hale would be listening.